Good morning, everyone, both here and in the sanctuary, and those viewing us from remote locations. No matter who you are, no matter whom you love, no matter where you are, you're welcome with us this morning. My name's Joe Miller. I'll be serving as a worship associate this morning, leading our service with Jen Oglesby, who'll be doing our reflection, Bob Rowland, our music, Chrissy Bushyeger, our wonderful director of religious education. You know, I sit over there most Sundays, and I just have to say how inspired I am by the stories Chrissy shares with us each Sunday. Some mornings they appeal to the child in me, some mornings they appeal to the adult in me, and some mornings they appeal to both. And I just had to take an opportunity to say that, Chrissy. I also want to thank the hospitality team, our tech team, our online host. Now, if you're on Zoom, please remember you can activate your closed captioning if that's helpful to you, and if you'd like to talk with other online participants after the service, there is the virtual coffee hour, so you can just stay logged on. And here, outside this morning, we'll have refreshments, so I hope everyone will stick around and enjoy the gorgeous weather outside for a few minutes. You know, this is, we're so blessed with this day today, just to be here together, but also nature is in its glory. Eileen and I have a dogwood and a lilac that are next to each other, and the red from the dogwood and the blue from the lilac are just striking. Nature as it's working its full palette for us today outside. So, Chrissy, do we have announcements?
Good morning. Just one quick announcement this morning, which is the same announcement I made last week. I am actively recruiting for RE teachers for next year, RE's religious education. We have openings at all levels. Some of our classes are starting to fill up, but we have some really exciting curricula happening next year in all of our levels, preschool through high school, and I really hope you'll consider volunteering in religious education next year. It is a meaningful way to give back. So I will be outside at our coffee hour area after the service with my big RE board, and you can come talk to me and I can answer any questions you might have. Thank you. Oh, you know what? I will just announce the hymn since I'm standing here. So please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our opening hymn, O Life That Maketh All Things New.
And now, if you'll remain standing, please join us now in reciting our covenant together. The words are on your screen. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, We covenant with ourselves and each other
truth in the spirit,
to seek
truth in the spirit of love,
to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart. Now I'd invite Rena Jerzika and John Jerzika to come up and light our chalice. Words come from the Oberlin UU Fellowship. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together. Thank you, Rita and John. And now we will, you can remain seated as we sing along in our centering song, May I Be Filled, May You Be Filled, May we be filled with loving kindness. And now is our time for joys and sorrows. Each week, we gather in community, carrying what we carry. We may be feeling full of joy or full of sorrow. We honor whatever it is we're feeling, wherever we are, by dropping stones of joy and sorrow into our bowl, or if you're joining us online, by sharing in the chat. All are welcome to come forward. I have two other joys to share. One from Sharon and Gabby Victorn Sachs, who want to share that Serafina Rosemary Wong was born on April 7th. She'll be their 5th grandchild and 4th granddaughter. And Peggy Seifert wants to share a joy. She and Barb will commence their Camino Santiago trek on Tuesday. And they are confident they will return changed. So I'll now drop a stone for these joys, a stone for the joys and sorrows that have been aired online, a stone for the joys and sorrows of those who are not with us today, and a stone of sorrow for the continuing situation in Ukraine, which I know weighs heavily on all our hearts. Now please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing Spirit of Life and follow along with the movements.
A story today that is a modern fairy tale. It's called The Fairy Tale of the Sad Sadness, and it is by Inga Wutha. Once there was an old woman walking down the street of the village, and you could tell she was an old woman because her face and her hands looked like those of an older woman. But she had this way of walking, this like spring in her step that made her seem like maybe she was a much younger woman. Anyway, she was walking along and she saw along the road a figure dressed all in gray. In fact, if you weren't paying close enough attention, it might look like it was just a pile of gray rags. But actually, you could make out the shape of a figure. The old woman walked over to this figure in gray and said, "Hello, who are you?" Two hollow eyes looked up at her and a small voice said, "I am the sadness." "Oh, the sadness," the old woman said. "I know you. You've walked along the path with me many times." The sadness was surprised. She said, "Are you not afraid of me? Are you not going to run from me?" The old woman said, "No. We both know if I tried to run, you could find me anywhere I went. Besides, what makes you so depressed? Why are you sitting on the side of the road?" The sadness looked at the woman and said, "Well, I am sad. The old woman sat down beside her and said, "So you are sad. Tell me more about that." The sadness was amazed. Was there someone who wanted to sit and listen to her? This almost never happened. She said, "Well, I am sad because no one likes me. People run from me. They try to hide from me whenever I come, and it is my job to come and be with people sometimes. But whenever I come, they push me away. They say things like, 'Turn that frown upside down.' They say things like, 'The sun will come out tomorrow.' They say things like, 'Only wimps cry.' They try whatever they can to distract themselves with pleasures to keep me away." The old woman nodded. "I have known people like that." The sadness said, "But you see, I'm only trying to help. When I am with people, they can find themselves. I can help them build a nest to tend to their wounds. I can help them cry their bottled up tears. But they don't want me with them. All they want to do is put a Band-Aid over their wounds and go on. They want to build an armor of bitterness." The sadness began to cry even harder. The old woman wrapped her arms around the sadness and said, "Let out those tears. I will stay with you. From now on, I will walk with you wherever you go." The sadness stopped crying. She looked up at her new friend. "Who are you?" she asked. "Me?" said the old woman. "Why, I am the hope." Thank you for listening to my story this morning. So it is time for our children to go to their religious education classes. We are picking up at 10:45 today, parents. And preschool, kindergarten will be on the playground. Some of our other classes might end up outdoors today too because it's so beautiful. So if they're not in the classroom, they're going to be outside. Bob will play our sending song. Our teachers will go out first, and then our children will go out during the second verse. All right, thank you.
So now's the time in our service where we share our gifts, our abundance. I ask you to do so generously. The beautiful building, wonderful grounds, and the wonderful staff we have all come through your donations. And you can do this through text-to-give function using your smartphone by just keying in that number on the screen. Thank you.
Good morning. Today's reading is from a book by Megan Devine entitled It's Okay That You're Not Okay, Meeting Grief and Loss in a Culture That Doesn't Understand. On the very first page, she has this to say to those who are grieving. Here's what I want you most to know. This really is as bad as you think. No matter what anyone else says, what has happened cannot be made right. What is lost cannot be restored. There is no beauty here inside this central fact. Acknowledgement is everything. You're in pain. It can't be made better. The reality of grief is far different from what others see from the outside. There is pain in this world that you can't be cheered out of. You don't need solutions. You don't need to move on from your grief. You need someone to see your grief, to acknowledge it. You need someone to hold your hands while you stare in blinking horror at the hole that was your life. Some things cannot be fixed. They can only be carried.
I brought my spirit to the sea. I stood upon the shore. I gazed upon infinity. I heard the waters roar. And then there came a sense of peace. Some whisper calmed my soul. Some ancient ministry of stars that made my spirit whole. I brought my spirit to the trees that loomed against the sky. I touched each wandering careless breeze to know if God was nigh. And then I felt an inner flame that fiercely burned my tears. A bright eye rose from bended knee to meet the asking years.
Before I begin, I'd like to note a couple of things. For many of us, hearing about others' grief awakens our own losses and may bring up our own pain. With that in mind, this is my invitation and my reminder to you to take care of yourself, even if that means you may need to step away. Secondly, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that while I'm sharing my reflections on grief, I am by no means the only one who could tell this story. I share my experience today with a recognition that all of our losses are worthy of attention, that grief takes many forms, and that grief doesn't always mean that we have lost someone to a death. As I share my own story, I hold space for all the grief that goes unnamed and unnoticed and unspoken among us. And as I honor my grief today, I also honor yours. Grief stories are love stories. Sometimes about the love we had, other times about the love we wish we'd had. With that in mind, I can't talk to you about grief without telling you a little bit about the love story at the center of mine. My love story with my sister Melissa started the day she came home from the hospital as a newborn. She was 2 years younger than me, my only sibling, and I was obsessed with her from the start. There are photos of me lying on a blanket next to her, both of us on our bellies, my toddler nose mere inches away from her newborn one. The connection between us was palpable and effortless. Things pretty much stayed that way for the next 40 years. Melissa and I had our sibling squabbles for sure, and our times of drifting closer and further apart, but at the heart of our relationship was an almost magnetic connection and a sense of being deeply part of one another that was obvious not only to us, but to everyone who knew us. We had a closeness and a soul-deep connection that is rare among siblings. In a letter that she wrote to me 2 years ago, Melissa told me, "I always just wanted to be near you." I assure you, the feeling was mutual. She, along with my husband and my 2 children, was the great love of my life. My grief story started in April of 2016, when she contacted me in the middle of an ordinary workday to tell me that a recent MRI showed a tumor in her brain. I'll never forget pacing in the parking lot outside of my office that day, on the phone with my sister, and then my husband, and then my mom, trying furiously to understand. It was the first of many moments that made absolutely no sense. What happened in the 5 years that followed is too much to recount, so I'll give you the highlights. Melissa underwent surgery and then radiation, and her life was forever changed. While successful in treating her cancer, her treatments left her with a number of disabilities that impacted her speech, mobility, vision, and short-term memory. She could no longer work or drive or hike or play music or make art, but she found her own beautiful ways of creating a new life and making the world just a little bit kinder and a little bit more just. She was cancer-free for several years, until suddenly she was not. And on December 10th, 2021, I crawled into bed next to my sister, wrapped my body around hers, and told her that I loved her for the very last time, my nose just inches from hers. And after that, absolutely everything went dark. There was nothing in my life except the crushing absence of my sister, the overwhelming longing that I felt for her, and the total disbelief that someone so vibrant and bright and treasured should be out of time at 40 years old. I was devastated, furious, lonely, and confused to the exclusion of everything else in my life. I felt, and still often feel, completely and utterly lost. In the weeks and months that followed, it was easy to feel as though I should feel differently, as though I should be doing more to be on the road to healing. With the best of intentions, people told me how strong I was, how my sister wouldn't want me to be sad, how she was in a better place, and how lucky I was to have been so close with her and that I could be grateful for that. They wished me comfort and peace, 2 things that felt so far outside of my reality that it felt as though I'd landed on another planet where I didn't speak the language. It seems that we offer people who are grieving 2 options: to be in complete devastation, but not for too long, or to be filled with gratitude and happy memories. The reality of grief is far more complicated than that. We're so uncomfortable with discomfort and pain, so quick to want to get people to the place where they're okay, to encourage them to stay busy and to find joy and to think about the future. Feel your feelings, sure, but don't stay there too long. Life is for the living, and you have to keep moving forward. But where does that leave someone when they can't feel the way you want them to feel? Or when you stop naming and recognizing their loss, assuming that they've moved on? I'll tell you, it leaves them lonely. It leaves them silent and pretending. It leaves them feeling that something is wrong with them, that people don't want their pain, and that they should somehow be better at managing the complete and utter horror show that has become their life. On a broader scale, it leaves us all without the connection and the courage that we need to get each other through our darkest hours. What if we stop trying to make it better? What if we surrender instead? What if we give ourselves over to grief and allow ourselves and others the full experience of their pain for however long it takes? For today's reading, I read a passage from Megan Devine's book, It's Okay That You're Not Okay. I feel deeply fortunate to have found her work. I can't tell you what a relief it was for someone to say to me, this really is as bad as you think. No expectations, no platitudes, no comfort, no peace. It gave me permission to allow my feelings without a timetable and a recognition that I didn't need to move on from my grief. I just had to learn how to carry it, how to allow it as my uninvited companion, how to trust that it would shift and soften of its own accord without any help from me. Here's the truth about grief and loss. It can't be fixed. You can't take away someone's pain, nor should you try. And if you're someone who's grieving, you can't betray your own heart by rushing or distracting yourself into a place of peace and comfort that isn't true. The cavernous hole that's been left in my heart by the absence of my sister cannot be filled with distractions or happy memories or gratitude, nor do I wish it to be. That place is hers. It belongs to her and to us and to everything that we shared together. I would no sooner fill it or pretend it isn't there than I would deny my love for her. Her death will never be okay with me. My longing for her something that never leaves me. I don't need anyone to fix those things, and I don't need to pretend that they are anything other than what they are. We think that if we don't fix our grief that it will overcome us, but the truth is that trying to rush ourselves or others along the path of grief puts us at war with ourselves and with our own hearts. We've been told that grief is something that we need to get over, that visiting our past somehow robs us of our future. But I believe that we can have a full and beautiful and joyful life even as we invite our scars to stay with us forever. We can trust ourselves and each other to navigate an experience that is as old as humankind and as universal as breathing. Grief can be extraordinarily painful, but I believe we struggle with grief not because it's inherently unbearable, but because the world tells us that it's somehow not okay. When our grief is met with silence, when it often goes unheld and unseen, we can easily start to believe that our grief is wrong, that it somehow needs to be pushed or hidden away. I've stopped pushing away my grief. I'm learning how to let it settle in as my companion, learning how to imagine the cavernous hole in my heart as a place that will always be there. Sometimes I stand on the edge of that cavern, looking in, and give myself over to all of my sadness and anger and loneliness. Sometimes I step away, knowing that the hole still remains, but that it's also okay to be here and now, to seek out pleasure and joy in life. And sometimes, much to my surprise, I'll peek over at the cavern and notice a flower growing along the edge, or a new tree springing forth from the ground. They appear, those little bits of beauty, of comfort, of hope, all without my having done a thing to try to make them grow, and all while I gave free rein to all of my rage and pain. My grief isn't something to be managed. It waxes and wanes, changes and softens of its own accord. It doesn't require me to force myself into the land of happy memories and gratitude and acceptance. The greatest gift we can give each other in times of great loss is to let ourselves and each other be not okay. Because when we do, we find the other people who aren't okay, and those who remember what it's like not to be okay, and that's where we find hope. Not in platitudes, but in the truth. Not in moving on, but in connection. Not in denying our own broken and tender hearts, but in recognizing that the painful price of love is grief, and that we can honor and hold that truth as a price we're willing to pay. We can allow our grief to create points of connection with each other, just as surely and truly as love does. But this only works if those of us around us are willing to turn toward our grief, if we're willing to allow each other our pain without trying to make it better. We have to abandon the story that we don't know what to do or what to say when people we love face a devastating loss, that we can't bear to imagine their despair, that we can't handle sitting with their pain, because when we do that, we're leaving each other alone. We're confining our grief behind closed doors and in support groups and in the offices of therapists, and I don't think those are the only places where grief belongs. We can create space for people where they feel that their grief is known and welcome and seen for as long as it takes. We can make room for the truth. We can be courageous and wise and mention a person's loss and speak their beloved's name, not just at the funeral, but in the weeks and months and years to follow. And while we can, and should, continue to drop off meals and send sympathy cards and share our condolences on Facebook, we must remember that those things are no substitute for looking someone in the eye and witnessing their pain, for letting them feel our steady presence, for getting past our own discomfort and being the one to speak their loss out loud. We can hold someone's hands while they stare in blinking horror at the hole that was their life. Because the uncomfortable reality is that if you haven't yet experienced a loss that rips open your world and brings you to your knees, you most likely will. And when that happens, I hope there will be someone in your life who is brave enough to stand at the edge of the cavern with you, to acknowledge all of your pain, to look with you into that overwhelming and vast hole and not turn away. That is our comfort and our peace. That is how we move forward. That is where we find hope, not in moving on, but in moving toward each other. Not in pushing away our pain, but in trusting that we can allow our grief, that we have the right to our pain, and that together we can find the way through. I'd like to close today with a blessing from my fellow grievers. If you, like me, are learning to live with a pain that will never fully go away, if you're tending to a hole in your heart that will never be filled, here is my blessing for you. May you let things be as bad as they are, and know that this means that you're going through a hard thing, not that something is wrong with you. May you trust that sometimes there is nothing you need to do except let things be exactly as they are, let yourself be exactly as you are, and know that things will soften and change as they will, when they will. May you lean into your pain, grieving what once was, finding ways to honor and carry it with you, refusing to leave behind anything that feels like a betrayal to your own heart. May you find the courage to tell the truth about how hard and scary and painful life can be, and may the truth call forth other broken hearts looking to connect with yours. May you remember that you aren't alone. May you find the people willing to be with your pain, the people who will stay and who will hold your hands as you stare into the gaping hole that was your life. If you're lucky enough to have even one person who can do that for you, I hope you'll let them love you. May you know that you can trust yourself. No matter what anyone tells you, you're not doing this wrong. You don't need to fix this. You will learn how to carry it. May you trust yourself to find the way forward, and may you allow your heart whatever it needs along the way. May it be so.
Thank you, Jen. Now please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I'm leading each day.
As Jen extinguishes the chalice flame, please join me in saying the words printed on your screen. Although we now extinguish our chalice flame, may we hold its warmth in our hearts in all the days ahead. So I want to thank everybody who helped the service today, hospitality team, our tech team. Remind the folks online that there's the opportunity to take advantage of the breakout coffee hour. And for those here, please join us outside for refreshments. So if you're comfortable taking the hand of a neighbor, I invite you to do so, or you may raise your hand in a virtual hand holding as we say our benediction together. For those who come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those who come, may life return your affection. And for those who come to seek a path, may a way be found, and the courage to take it step by step.
Blessed be.